I think that's what we'll continue to explore
For sure.
as we go forward. And, really the diversity of viewpoints and, what makes up the fabric of the Jewish people and the Reform movement and Israeli society, of course. But can we take a step back? Because I want to learn a little bit more about you. We've known each other a long time, and you've been working for over 20 years in this field. But essentially, how did you get to where you are today? Tell me a little bit about the house in which you grew up, and what were some formative moments for you along the way that led you to be who you are today.
So thank you for that. I grew up in a secular family. I actually was born in Canada, but I came back to Israel as a baby. And we celebrate the holidays, of course. We were, in this sense, of course, very much sort of part of, the Israeli Jewish culture, but we didn't have a kiddush on Friday night. And I really had a very weak connection.
What was Friday night like for you growing up?
Just like regular like dinner, but without any religious,
Any rituals or candlelighting or anything like that?
I had no idea about Reform Judaism at all growing up. Okay, I'm 57 years old, so it's been a while ago because it's not the case today. I mean, now I think we're a completely different reality. But when I grew up in the 70s, it was really something that I haven't, known about. I didn't have a bat mitzvah growing up. It was like not a thing. Nobody around me. I have only sisters, so none of them were, didn't have a bat mitzvah. And I really sort of discovered Judaism only when I was, after I studied law and after I starting working. When I moved to Mevaseret Zion, this is where I live today, a suburb of Jerusalem. And I was looking for preschool for my oldest son. He was then 3. It was 25 years ago.
Can I just ask you before you get to, you've already gotten married and have kids, and what was the political atmosphere in your family like growing up? I mean, was there a party affiliation, or how did that work? Paint that picture for us a little bit.
So I was very politically active from a very young age. I was, part of like a youth organization, which was associated with a liberal party. It was then Ratz, like before Meretz.
The precursor of the Meretz party called Ratz. Of course.
Like in high school, I was very much affected, or like the issue of social justice was really, burning in me from a very young age. And I think this is why I went to study law. Okay, I went to study law because I wanted to change the world through law. Pursuit of justice was very strong for me, and that's why I went to study law. I didn't want to work in a law firm. I wanted to use my legal knowledge and capabilities to actually bring about like a better.
And at the risk of going on for a long time, in the 80s and 90s, what did social justice mean then? Because in the 80s, you couldn't even say a Palestinian state, right? Or like, or was it more domestic sort of social issues? And what did that look like for you?
I think it was both issues of religion and state.
Well, already really issues of religion and state,
and human rights in general. It was like the time of like the first Lebanon war, so it was like a very different time from today. But being, against like a government which goes on a war, which didn't seem something that we should be doing, was like an issue still back then. So I would say it was like issues around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in general, and sort of discrimination and within Israel as well. So I would say both of those issues.
Like Ashkenazi Mizrahi stuff and like that kind of,
say Arab and Jew.
Sure,
Like maybe like economical disparities, those kinds.
Social class and No, it's fascinating because as you compare some of the issues and how it's evolved,
right. It was a very different world. Obviously, a few years later, the first Intifada, which really started, and like Oslo, right? I remember actually during my honeymoon, we actually saw the ceremony of 1993,
September 13th, 1993, the handshake on the White House lawn.
Clinton and Rabin and Arafat. So we saw that, and it was like, oh my God, we're like in a completely different world. And I think that this is a perspective that obviously my kids and the younger generation here lack of like a different country that actually seeks peace, right?
Wow.
I mean, we just
Wow.
commemorated 30 years since the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. And
Unbelievable.
like, it's hard for people who, were born at the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s to imagine a different Israel. But we grew up in like a different Israel, right? When I was a young adult, it was the days of like, oh my God, we're approaching peace. We're going to have like a different Middle East. And it seemed like a different world we were entering into that seems today like imaginary, right? But we could imagine it
There's
back
like this
then.
fairy tale time period called the 90s that,
obviously it wasn't fairy tale, right? There were so many suicide bombings. And I know that you lived in Israel, around.
back and forth a lot. Yeah,
and
of
obviously,
course.
like you had this experience too. It wasn't like a fairy tale. Oh, everything was amazing. Like we always saw it as an immense challenge, but we knew like what our vision is, and like it seems reachable, right?
It was almost achievable. Yeah, like you could reach out and touch it. Yes, of course. I remember, in July of 2000 when it started to collapse, and you're like, well, wait a second, this was not supposed to happen. This was going to be the thing. Yeah. Right. So no, that it's such a fascinating, those were formative years for you. And so you went to study law.
Yeah, and by the way, when Rabin was assassinated, I lived here. I studied at Columbia, and I lived in New York, and I was not in Israel. I was not present. And actually, because it was the 90s, and, like, obviously, I, followed the news, but it was not as it is now, right? That, everything as it happens.
Right.
And so, like, I wasn't aware of the unbelievable incitement that was against Rabin at the time.
Leading up to his
assassination. And actually, when he was killed, I was sure he was killed by an Arab terrorist. I had no idea, like, there was so much incitement from this, Jewish side, and it like came like as a complete shock, even more so than for people living here. So obviously, because I was here, I did not experience it as people in Israel did, and it was, I'm sure, like for you and for people who were here, it was sort of. I mean, you were younger than me, so
but I'll share my story. But
I was then 26.
Sure.
It was a complete shock, and I came back to Israel like a year later, and it was a different Israel, right? Right after Netanyahu was elected, and it was a different time. It was really hard to sort of understand, where we're at.
Yeah.